Hello everyone, this is Mini Ninja speaking. You can consider this kind of a part 1 of the unofficial Gogeta figure reviews, as we're going to be looking today at the Demoniacal Fit Hero Waltz figure, which as you can see is the Possessed Horse, aka DF version of the Fusion Reborn Gogeta. Super Saiyan form, of course. Now, as you can kind of guess from the general packaging, as per always, they do their best to make it look like a knockoff version of the event-exclusive SH Figuarts toys, which, speaking of which, the official Gogeta will be considered one of those when it comes out. But for now, we're going to take a look at this, admittedly, somewhat limited packaging here in terms of its accessories. This is normally a little less than the standard fare, but it's the main content that matters, so let's open it up. And as we get it out of the clamshell, roughly stands at about 6.5 inches tall. My camera view is a little bit wonky on here, which is why I'm going to tell that part out loud. And you can see this is absolutely a 3.0 style figure, which comically enough is something that the upcoming official one that is going to be at the NYCC event doesn't do, as that's just a recolored version of the 2.0 that they already set out with the Super Saiyan Blue for the movie version. Now, in terms of how the articulation happens to handle on this one, as well as general appearance, just to get that out of the way, appearance-wise, it's actually fairly solid, and as far as I can tell, a mostly original sculpt, which is kind of up and down. I would say the sculpt for the main body is actually quite nice, but if we're being totally honest, the hair and head has been rightly criticized. While it is a decent sculpt and as a whole, it is definitely not accurate to Gogeta as he was in this original movie. The original movie, I think it was movie 12 off the top of my head. No, it was movie 13. I'll have to double check that later. But either way, the hairline is definitely kind of wonky. Now, in terms of the actual articulation, getting back to where it was, the overall figure does move like a proper 3.0 figure, and the joints are quite stiff on there, and the butterfly joints, I would say, are actually quite flexible, and the way they have the vest cut up, while it does have one slight issue here, namely that you can see that the inside part actually shows a skin-colored joint on the inside, is otherwise a very good way to adapt the vest, because it actually flows more naturally with the rest of the body movement, as well as most of the upper body, which, as you can see, double jointed elbows, fully rotatable shoulders, regular hands and wrists. Honestly, just great. The ab crunch is maybe not the best I've ever seen, but it's still decent. Waist articulation is alright. Hip articulation, you get a decent split. It's kind of limited, which is something that seems to be native of the 3.0 style articulation, but it does the job. In terms of the general knees on them, once you get them like a full bend, it does look a little bit awkward, but unfortunately that's kind of standard fare with how the articulation system is set up for most of these toys, so it's kind of an understood conceit. However, at least the bright side is the joints themselves are quite tight, and will hold their poses without any issues. Overall, it's a very sturdy toy. The only other thing I would say is maybe the ankles themselves are kind of unimpressive in terms of the range of motions they have around with the double paw bag system there. But the bright side is, at least they're tight enough that you can definitely get some more creative posing, even getting the figure to stand on its own without a stand. Admittedly, this is not the most creative pose, I'll give you that, but you can definitely get some interesting stuff out there if you are willing to put a little extra time in there. The one little detail I will mention is that this particular toy does seem to have a few QC issues that are routinely popping up, at least in the reviews I've seen so far, namely involving the wrists themselves. Not the wrist pegs, but the whole wrist. Particularly where the wrap is, because that is a separate piece of plastic, a black plastic as opposed to being painted, which doesn't seem to be fully glued in a number of samples I've seen. Mind you, that is a very quick fix. A little bit of glue will reattach those without a hitch and keep them on there, but it is worth noting. Now, moving on to the accessories here, just a brief reminder, this toy does come with, I believe, about 4 expressions, an overall 11 set of hands, if I'm not mistaken, as well as one particular effect piece. And the reason we have 11 hands is because one of the hands is specifically for that effect piece. Now, for expressions, admittedly, we don't have too much to go on here, but that's mostly because Fusion Reborn Gogeta didn't have a lot of airtime to really work with, much less didn't exactly emote a ton while he was around. So pretty much there's mostly little things like the little smirk and such is kind of to expand on what will eventually be the Super Saiyan Blue re-release of this that is going to be coming down the line. As for the hands, I am about 90% certain these are reused Goku hands from previous releases, which I'm not going to judge them too harshly on, because frankly, if it works, it works. That being said, there will be the one exception of this last little key hand, which is more specifically for the effect piece, aka to remake the Stardust Breaker pose, which the effect is included on there, and for something that's a slightly recolored translucent ball, is effective enough. Now, little key kind of a proof of concept shot of how the faces work. Basically, you pull the whole face off, bangs and all, and the faces themselves kind of plug up and down into the hair bangs, and then everything clicks back into the face. Fairly effective, honestly a pretty tight fit to go on there, and the only thing I will kind of say that is the actual widow's peak on the hair here is inaccurate for what the actual Fusion Reborn looks like. It is normally more pronounced, kind of like how we have Vegeta, as this whole transformation is definitely more Vegeta-centric. But let's be honest, if my main chief complaint is that the widow's peak is inaccurate, you're probably doing most of the rest of the toy alright. All in all, it's a very fun toy to mess around with, and I did very much enjoy messing around with it during posing it in this particular review. And compared to the original Gogeta toy that we have here, being the more official Super Saiyan Blue one that is the movie-based one, yeah, it's kind of not a fair comparison. We're talking a brand new articulation type that is a lot more range, and a much more impressive sculpt, frankly speaking. And even in terms of scaling, he fits in pretty well with the Dragonstars Janembo, which it's pretty weird we still don't have another version of him at this point. But overall, you will have a lot of fun posing and messing around with this toy, is what I will say. And you can recreate pretty much anything out of the very brief existence of the Fusion Reborn Dragon Ball Z era of Gogeta. So you can kind of tell, as a standalone figure, I'm pretty okay with this release. Will I still be saying the same when the eventual Camion Thai Kickboxer comes in? Well, once it eventually does arrive, we'll have to see at that point. For now, all of you take care.